now that I had COVID it down. It was rather.
Good evening. May the meeting come to order. Well, glad that you made it to, it feels like it ought to be the October meeting, but I guess it's technically the September meeting. And my name is Ron Schwartz. I'm the president of the River Valley Beekeepers. You would think that I could say it if I am it, but anyway, glad to have you here. And so got a couple of things I would like to go over tonight or mention. One is, like we normally do, is the beekeeper's calendar, which I guess I really ought to be given the October calendar rather than the September calendar, because September is pretty much gone. But according to the calendar, which that's one of the things we learned at the conference, is that you really can't keep these necessarily by the calendar, but it's good to consider. But you know, as we enter into fall, the drone raising will end. That'll be probably pretty soon, if not already, be kicking drones out of the house. So probably start seeing the numbers decline something to kind of get ready for their winter cluster. So what we should be doing is, if your hives are kind of light, you should be feeding them. Probably switch to two about now, because you know that they're going to have food for winter. If they don't have it, the goldenrod blooms kind of started out good, but I think the dry weather's killed it. But it seems I don't see many bees on mine around the house anymore. But anyway, you should be probably finishing up your mite treatments if you're so inclined to treat the mites, which we'll talk about that a little later. Probably about time to start putting mouse guards on to keep, actually put some on mine today. Watch for robbing, found some of that today too. That's what prompted the mouse guard. But, so that's about it. We really kind of trying to get our hives ready for winter, which is feeding them if they need to be, you know, finishing up your mite treatments, put on mouse guards, and that sort of thing. Any questions about the beekeeper's calendar, which, by the way, you can get from our website anytime you want to. No questions about that now. Just last weekend, I went to the Arkansas Beekeepers Association annual conference. And I would just like to give a kind of quick update of what I found there and what went on. They had two primary speakers. One was a lady named Tina Sebastian. Is that right? She gave several talks. Probably one of the best things she talked about, well, two things really, is keeping bees in horizontal hives. I think she particularly likes the long Langstroth hives. She also talked quite a bit about winter bees and getting, you know, what it takes for a winter bee to get through the winter. Has a lot to do with fat bodies and stuff like that, and which kind of brings it into one of the issues that winter bees have with Varroa. See, Varroa mites feed on the bees' fat bodies, and you know, I've had bees that things, you know, eventually you kind of start connecting dots. I guess you can get around these enough occasionally, but I would find, and I know you all mentioned it to me, you would have a hive of bees that had honey in them, and but still find them all dead, froze to death. And, it could be, I said, well, you know, why did the bees starve to death or freeze to death, starve to death with a hive full of honey? What's the deal here? And it could be that, you know, if the Varroa infestation is bad enough, that, see, the Varroa, feed on the bees' fat bodies, and the fat body is what it needs to get it through winter, to be healthy, and the fat bodies act like, kind of like a liver for a bee. It filters out impurities, stuff like that, so the bees really need those, but the Varroa might eat that. And that's really one of the ways it causes so much damage to bees. Anyway, I shouldn't have any problem with that. You got plenty of fat bodies here, but I think it's fat bodies might be bad for humans, but good for bees. Then we had another speaker, was a young man named Cayman Reynolds from Tennessee. Just a wealth of information. Really, I think Glenn mentioned it too, but it felt like drinking from a fire hose all weekend, just all the information. But just a lot of good information. I really can't even begin to go over it all tonight, but I guess if I wanted to really sum up like two main takeaways from the whole weekend, I would say is, one is I think I should give long lengthers hives at least a serious look as far as the way of keeping bees. There seems to be a lot of good things about that. Maybe not the entire answer, but it's certainly worth a serious look at as a way of, you know, a way of keeping bees.
Does anybody in here have one?
John's got
I
it.
don't. John has had one.
He does.
Maybe someday you can tell us what your experiences are. But, and the other thing I would take away is that that I don't, even though I know that you guys think I sound like a broken record talking about Varroa and managing Varroa, but you hadn't heard nothing compared to what, especially, you know, well, both Tina and Cayman, they just, you know, over and over again, they talked about how important it was that you manage Varroa somehow. Now, there's a lot of ways to manage it. Some people manage it through Darwinian method, which is survival of the fittest. But most people, you know, treat using some miticide of some sort. But so my takeaway from that is that I do treat for Varroa, but I've got a long ways to go to really be effective at it. Because just at every turn, both Tina and Cayman, they talked about how important it was that being successful at beekeeping is that you really got to keep the mites, you know, the managed mites, and you really can't do that and have healthy bees. And then got anything you want?
Brenda took notes. One of the things that I was really blown away was Dr. whatever his name is, Alphabet.
Dr. Z.
Dr. Z. He's the,
Dr. John Zavishlak.
that's it. But you've all heard about pheromones in the hive, and he gave an unbelievable synopsis of the research that's going into this now and how pheromones, the dynamics of pheromones in a hive, it just was mind-boggling. Like, the queen actually has, I think, 7 or 8 different glands that secretes different hormones, and and this secretion is a chemical mix, and the lack of or the abundance of certain hormones in the queen causes different things to happen in the hive, along with the pheromones that are put off by, what is it, brood? Brood actually has hormones, pheromones. Pheromones. Here, yeah.
Three things.
Yeah. And the drones, the worker bees, and it was just amazing. I mean, if one level of pheromone drops, the other one comes up, it triggers a reaction in the hive. If you get to the Arkansas State Extension Office and look up the plant board and then etymology, you can probably pick up on some of this stuff. I think that was his link into that.
Yeah.
But it was just, I always just thought the queen is, you have queen pheromone, bees flying around, everybody's happy, but that's not the way it works, I want to tell you. But it was really a very in-depth study of how the pheromones work in the dynamics of a beehive. Very interesting.
Yes.
Something I took from it is, I don't know who it was, but he said, however you treat your mites, don't go in and just treat them and not know what the situation is. You need to know what the infestation is before you treat them, so you know if you're successful. So, that's what I did.
Yeah. And that's what one of the things I was alluding to is I have been treating more or less prophylactically, in that I know my bees have mites, so I treat them. But I really don't know, is it a heavy mite load, moderate mite load? I treat them, did it work? And especially Cayman, he's a commercial beekeeper, keeps somewhere around 200-300 hives. He's getting, and in Tennessee, I guess it's kind of hill country, probably a lot like here. He's averaging around 100 pounds of honey per hive a year. And a situation very similar to ours.
Did I understand it that he, like the pictures he showed us, there'd be like 3 supers and then
Yeah, he's got
6
hives like this
mediums?
tall.
And when he harvests, of course, he's doing it as a business. He'd take all of it down all the way to the bottom super. And then he would feed those bees. So he wanted to get all the honey he possibly could.
Yeah.
And but it made him where he had to feed the bees more in the winter. Is that right?
Yeah, of course, like I said, he's making a living at this. I don't know, except for John. None of us make a living keeping bees, but, I think his logic is that, he has to harvest honey and sell it to feed his family, and that honey sells for, well, he was saying $10 a pound. I said, I wish we could get $10 a pound from it.
Right, everybody in the room said, I wish.
But, sugar water is a lot cheaper than honey, so it's in his favor. Now, I'm not inclined to do that because, I don't have, I just try to cover some of my expenses, with it, but so I don't rob him that heavy, but no way that I am getting even close to 100 pounds of honey to harvest. even.
And he's such a young guy.
Yeah.
He looks like a little kid.
Yeah, young is pretty relative when you get to our age, right?
Kicking up, yeah.
Everybody, yeah.
While we're on the subject of Cayman Reynolds, he has an awesome YouTube channel called Tennessee Beekeeper. And he's done one recently. He's gotten approval from, I don't know if it's FDA or USDA, to go and do testing of some new methods for controlling varroa mites. And he also, part of that was on doing some oxalic vaporization, where I think it's labeled for 1 gram per super. He was doing, well, he said doing one of his hives, he did the test on of 2 brood chambers in each 10 frames. And he did like 4 or 5 straight weeks of doing the testing. He said they got 40 grams of oxalic acid vapor during this little research that he's been approved to do. And he let out this week that the one thing that they saw from that is where he also used some other, it was Apivar, I think, or and it said
Apigard, I think is.
But in any case, he said, you know, the other treatments that he used, it does suppress the bees, but they do come back. But he said there's 40 grams of oxalic acid, they're not coming back. So they're learning from this. And so he's doing a lot of that kind of thing. There's a lot, he's great at giving you information on his YouTube videos. I just, if you're into YouTube videos, consider looking at that.
What was it called?
Tennessee Beekeeper.
Yeah, he's got a, I'm sorry.
Just look Cayman Reynolds, just put Cayman in and you'll come up with
Cayman
it.
Reynolds, and I think you'll find it, and I'm gonna be out of town for a week, but I won't do anything beekeeping wise for a while, but I can maybe try to find a link, put it on our Facebook page. But he's just a wealth of information, and something like you have to watch out for is, and that's one of the topics or topics mentioned by Tina, is that, you know, there's a whole lot of beekeeping information out there. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. And the thing that I like about Cayman and Tina is that, you know, they're producing the results, you know, so yeah, they're really worth listening to. And I guess with that, they have already established the date for next year's conference. It's going to be September the 29th and 30th. It'll be in Mountain View again. They've got 2, at least as it stands now, 2 speakers lined up. One of them is Kent Williams. I don't know anything about him. And David Westervelt. Does that sound right? He has been a speaker at one of our conferences before in Florida, but I don't remember much about it. But I think you'll like it. So anyway, things are lining up for next year's conference. I would highly encourage people to go. There were several people from the club there, so it's good to see that. But again, it's just a lot of good information.
Ron?
Yes.
Ron, how well was it attended?
How many people there? Say 100?
About
100?
The number that I got, excluding workers, I guess, their actual club members was
110?
110.
To me, that sounds small. And personally, we didn't find an agenda till about 3 days before.
Yeah, that was something I would probably would mention. I may mention it to James Ryan, the president, that agenda was a little late coming out. And I have seen, I guess last year it was probably better attended than this year, but, it
Okay,
is what
another
it is.
question. Did anybody from our group do any copy, any recording? Is there gonna be any sharing at all? Or did the organization, the state organization, do you know, do any sharing that is gonna be, any copying that will be shared with?
Talking about like recording video, I seriously doubt it. I don't know of any.
I didn't see anyone doing anything.
They had a hard time keeping the projectors.
Yeah, they did a good job of keeping PowerPoint cycle, much less recorded, but, I think that, most of the two primary speakers virtually, there's probably, I know Cayman, I don't know about Tina. There's probably very little that they said at the meeting that you can't get from their YouTube or Facebook page or something like that, so. I know Cayman's got a pretty extensive YouTube video library. I don't know about Tina.
How many bee clubs are there in Arkansas, do you know?
I don't know. There's probably a dozen or so.
At one time, there was probably over a dozen, and I'd say now it's probably about 10.
So do y'all keep up with membership of all the clubs for the state? Is that something they record there for the national, for the state thing?
I don't think so. The state organization, it's, you know, it's not, I'm just gonna say it's not terribly sophisticated. It's run like by people like me and you and always, you know, most everybody's got jobs and bees and they just do this kind of as, you know, just out of love for bees and.
We couldn't make it this year,
Yeah.
but we would like to have gone. Were there vendors up there set up also showing new products, just
Oh,
two? Okay, I'm with her, I think 110 is pretty poor, poor.
Well, you have to
attendance.
understand though, is that, the state organization, the Arkansas Beekeepers, is kind of in a period of rebuilding after really kind of almost going under. And that's when, James Ryan really had built it up to a pretty strong organization at one time, and then stepped down as president, and he just went through some bad times.
Right, okay.
And,
I remember him talking about it.
and so now this was his first year back as president again. Of course, James he's older than me, pretty old. And, so he's working hard to kind of build it up again, and it's gonna take some time, and really our help as much as we can.
Well,
Participate.
our input would be, it's not at the greatest time. It needs to be more October, November, or even January, February, and I suppose that's a weather thing. Because September is still a big product month, a big, honey, time to sell your honey and be active in events.
Yeah.
And work your hives at home too. But anyway.
When is it a time, I have to work on mine year round, I'm sure there is a time I can, January, but, you don't wanna be traveling to mountain view in January, cause that 50-50 chance you can't get there.
I don't remember what month it was when we went to the ones in Little Rock, but they were very well, attended and many more vendors and of course it's easier for the central people to get there, but, I wish I
But
could
it's
remember what
whenever they
months.
deviated and started moving them away from Mountain View is whenever it started spiraling down. Because, you know, I went to one up in Little Rock, it was in like January, and I remember being ice on the road, and it was
Snow on the ground.
snow on the ground, and it was ugly. And be honest with you, I don't much care to go to Little Rock for anything.
Well, we're supposed to get a conference center in Conway. It's being built, pretty much as we speak. Maybe sometime there could be one in Conway.
Yeah, maybe so.
Hey, Ron, I'm hearing a lot of interest in these conferences, and I hate to jump back on Cayman's wagon, but Cayman and his wife and other members are, I think last year may have been, this year may have been the first year, they have one that's called Hive Life.
Yeah.
And it's in Saraville, Tennessee. It's national. Sevierville, okay.
Sevierville.
Okay. It's scheduled for January 6th and 7th of 2023. And I was watching one of his live chats, and they're talking like they're gonna probably cut off members to come, if you will, at 1,500. And they got 200 vendors gonna be there with equipment and all kinds of great sales and stuff. So if you wanna drive a little bit further,
That's
know.
by Pigeon Forge. Yeah.
but anyway, that's something that seems to be, it's driving pretty well, it seems like.
Yeah,
It cost you about $325, I think, to register.
Anyway, any other questions before we move on to our door prizes? Oh, did you wanna mention something about your candle?
I have a new product I'm gonna show you tonight, and there's one on the door prizes. We call this an emergency candle. See this little 6-ounce can and the emergency part all written on top. Now, how does it differ from any other candle in that it can be kept in your car and in a nice little can like this? We've researched this. In fact, a beekeeper in Conway had told us that he used to make these in the little camera cans, you know, the little film cans, and he sold them so easily to campers and hikers and outdoorsmen and whatnot. So all I have is 100% pure beeswax. And through my research, I learned that you must say, if you really are 100% beeswax, you say 100% with that. And otherwise, if you just say pure beeswax, it only has to be 51%. So that was interesting to know too. So tell me, why would I want 100% pure beeswax?
So it doesn't melt in your car.
Okay, why else?
Sounds like the voice of experience.
That's right.
Smell.
Pardon?
Because it's non-smell.
That too, the smell is gonna be natural, yeah.
Non-toxic.
What?
Non-toxic.
Non-toxic, you got them all, keep
Burn
going.
time?
Say it again.
Burn time?
Burn time, that helps too.
And she wants to sell them.
Okay, all right, my spiel is brighter, you know, cleaner, longer lasting, burns slowly. Actually, and this is a little bit controversial, but I've seen it on more than one place. Pure beeswax has an ionization process, and it pulls out of the air dander and dust and mold.
Smoke.
And smoke,
Cigarette
yes,
smoke.
yeah. And as far as you say, longer burning, we tested it. Now, we did make these, but after reading all about it, so this little can will burn for about 15, 16 hours. We made one smaller that'll burn 7 or 8 hours. If a person needed it for an emergency, you wouldn't wanna burn it the whole thing. You burn it till you're ready to start your fire or whatever else you needed, and then you put it back in your thing there. And so that's our comments about it.
What are you charging for that?
This one we're charging $14 for. Now, I've only had them out two Saturdays at my small farmer's market, and I've sold 3 this size and two smaller ones. So we'll see what happens about it. But that's also what you gotta explain. Beeswax is $20 a pound easily in the storage, you know. And then also, if you could see this one, you would see, I'll pass this around if you wanna look at it. You'd see the crack in it, and so I explain, yeah, beeswax is very hard. what you said about burning longer, if you look up the, emergency candles, you know, eBay and Amazon and that, you'll find some that say they burn 100 hours and whatnot. But they are a mix of other waxes too, so they don't have those benefits there.
Yeah, Neiman Marcus sells pure beeswax candles, they're $400.
Is that right? Oh, I'm
They're too cheap.
Anybody else? Anybody have an emergency candle in your, what? Your fishing tackle or something that you can give me some other ideas for selling? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're ready for the door prizes.
Yeah.
We have a door prize